Welcome back to my channel. As you can see from the slide, the subject for today's discussion is A to Z, that is the complete story, beginning from A to Z, that is from the Genesis to the redemption. I will try to explain the whole thing. From the beginning, from the very first of my videos, I more often than not, I'll be referring to one text called Apocrypha of Saint John. But I don't think I have ever explained what it is about, and even if I did it in bits and parts. So I felt like making a comprehensive video about the Apocrypha of John, what exactly it tells you. So to give you a brief introduction, there is a sect of believers called Gnostics. The very word gnosis in Greek means knowledge. So, Gnostics mean the ones who have knowledge. So, knowledge about what? Of course, naturally, you will get that question in your mind. So, that knowledge is about the true Christ. Who is the true Christ? And how it all began with the fall of a goddess named Sophia. Let me show you a slide and then come to the description part. Yeah, this part I have explained many a time, but only briefly. So, this is how the Gnostic Cosmos looks like. It all started with the one, or in other terms, he's called the monad. I explained about this in other video where one circle appeared first, one energy emanation that is called the monad, and then a second circle appeared that is called the dyad, and the third circle appeared that was called the triad. So the very same thing here is explained. So of course, in terms of Gnosticism, first there was the father figure, who was called Noesis in Greek. Noesis means thinking, as you can see here. Then he created another entity called the mother, and her name was Noesios, meaning thought, as you can see here. So after some time, the father and the mother together created a child, who is none other than Jesus Christ himself. And they created a wife for him too. So after some time, of course, Christ, in terms of Gnosticism, he is thinking is the thought of itself, thinking a thought of itself. These terms may be little confusing to begin with, but later you'll get used to it. Father was thinking, mother was thought, the child was thinking a thought of itself. So that was Jesus Christ. And he had, of course, in Greek, noiosis, noiosis, right? So that describes Christ figure. So after some time, Christ got monotonous. He was feeling bored. He was all alone. So God created a company for him in the form of, here you can see, the four luminaries and their 12 ions. When we say ions here, in the beginning there were only energy emanations called ions, or in other terms we call them ages. In the sense there were just the timeless ages, ions they were called. So he created 4 luminaries and 12 ions. Each luminary, who is also an ion, is the head ion of that group, had assistant ions called, of course, they are ordinary ions. So the chief ion of this group was Armozel, and he had 3 assistant ions helping him by names Grace, Truth, and Form. Then there was the second luminary. God created Eleleth. Eleleth had 3 assistants in the form by names Perfection, Peace, and Wisdom. And this wisdom, ion of wisdom, was the youngest of the wisdoms, ions, because he created 12 ions to accompany Christ. She was the 12th ion. And now, she was called Sophia. Of course, we have come across this character even earlier here. Who is Sophia? Sophia is supposed to be the consort of Jesus Christ. And then God created the third chief luminary called Uriel, who had assistants afterthought, perception, and memory. And then came the last luminary, chief luminary, Deviathai, who had assistants by names and intelligence, love, and idea. Okay, now. So these were basically called the upper ions or the pleroma. Pleroma means fullness. So the heaven was full in a way. So far, so good. But then, as I have been telling the same story, here a rather unfortunate incident happened. Sophia, who is the goddess of wisdom, it's very, very surprising and what do you call, unnatural for the goddess of wisdom herself to fall into the depths of abyss below the border of heavenly water here. This is the heavenly water which separates the heaven and the material world. This realm of heaven was happy so far, But then, the first of the sins, as we can call it, took place, and the youngest of the what do you call the ions, the 12th ion, Sophia, fell down into abyss. And what was the result? Of course, this guy. The the ions from of heaven had a golden rule: never do anything without consulting your spouse. The spouse in Gnostic terms was called CGG. CGG is basically each of the gods or the ions had a twin, just like Christ had Sophia. I am not really sure who was the CGG of Armazel or Lilith or Oriel or Devatai. I am not sure. So for now, let us say the 12 ions along with Christ had twins who were their spouses. And without consulting their spouse, the gods, the ions, were forbidden to do anything. Whatever you do, you got to consult your spouse or the CGG, your twin. And of course, nobody was allowed to do anything without the knowledge of the Father, the One. So, but you know how the children behave, young children behave. When you are in teenage, you are you could be described as, your nature could be described at the best as rebellious. In every family you have a rebel, a child who rebels, who doesn't listen to the parents, who thinks that I too can do all these things. Why should I listen to my parents? Why? I am of age now. Why can't I do things on my own? Right? So, Sophia, being the youngest, she rebelled against the God and thought, why should I always obey the God and my husband? Why can't I have freedom? So, what she did was, she thought she could create something on her own without help of either her husband or the God himself, the monad. So she got the thought that I could create on my own, and she gave birth to a child called the Yaldabaoth. That could be called the first sin. So the Yaldabaoth was the result of the first sin of the gods. So you now know that the goddess of wisdom, Sophia, has fallen and gave birth to Yaldabaoth. And I have made a video earlier giving the whole story how Yaldabaoth was created from unfertilized egg. You see why it was sin. You see here, when we think of it in human terms, it is a very common knowledge that we need the sperm from the male and the egg from the female to form the zygote, and then zygote develops into a child and later into an adult being. But here what happened was she created this bath from just egg alone, that is the unfertilized egg. So that story I have told in another video. If you want, I will leave a link to that video below. But for now, let us continue the story, and I will now switch to these slides. Yeah. So, whence we come from, how did it all begin, are we alone? From the beginning, the birth of human being till now, man has always been racking his brain, thinking, where did I come from originally? Did I come from heaven? Did God create me, or did I evolve from animals, just like Charles Darwin told? The human being has always been asking these questions. Let us now try to answer some of these questions. So, humanity has been asking these questions during its whole existence. Many religions provide diverse, contradictory versions of Genesis or the very beginning. There are two main variants, first of which says there is but one God. The other says there are two gods, good one and the bad one. I, for one, firmly believe that in the dualistic variant, in the sense that there is one true good God who is called monad, the source or the one, and there is one evil God, Yalbath. Now, according to Gnosis, or the Gnostic book of Apocrypha of John, in the very beginning there were only energy emanations called ions, as I have already told you. Gnosis, meaning thinking, was the highest form of God. He is the one. He created a female companion called Noesios, meaning thought. They together created a child called Christ. Christ, after some time, felt alone, so the God created four luminaries who had three ions associated with them. I have already explained that, shown you the relevant picture. And Armazo was associated with qualities grace, truth, and form. Elaleth was associated with perfection, peace, and wisdom. Oriel was associated with afterthought, perception, and memory. Deviathai was associated with intelligence, love, and idea. All the ions had syzygies or spouses without whose consent no one was allowed to do anything. Now the critical phase of creation happens. Sophia, who is goddess of wisdom and the last of the 12 ions, fell victim to curiosity and in a moment of weakness gave birth without seeking her spouse's permission to an entity called Yaldabaoth, who had head of a lion and body of a snake. He had no idea where he came from and if there was anyone else apart from him in the world. The only voice he recognized was his mother's. Sophia realized her folly late and repented, but afraid of other ions' censure, she hid her son in a cloud. Yaldabaoth had the spark of his mother, is very brilliant, no doubt about that, being the son of a goddess of wisdom. He incurred all her qualities, all her power as well as wisdom. But, of course, he was an evil genius. So Elbath had the spark of his mother and all her wonderful powers. So he created material world consisting of Earth-centric 7 planets and 5 under Earth worlds. I will show you the how he created. I have already described about this in my previous video. I will leave a link to that video too on the bottom. But for now, I will show you how I came up with his model. Now, there is a scientific model of the universe called layers of manifestation, LOM, which has 7 layers. One, the called prime causal, second thought LOM, third unisonic LOM, fourth logomorphic LOM, fourth syntonic diffusive LOM, and there is template LOM or quantum potential. These are basically very scientific models of the universe. Now let me show another thing which is basically, let me show the clear picture. I think that is not quite clear, so I will show you the original picture. Yep. So this is how the Hindu model of universe looks like. This is called the Meru Parvata or the Mount Meru, around which you have a sea here, and this is basically the earth, the dividing layer between meeting point of the what do you call Patala Lokas. There are 7 of them here. I will explain about this. I will make another video about this, but for now I just want to show how the worlds created by Yaldabaoth look like. So here, this is our world. These are the 7 patalas. The Mount Meru ends up here in heaven. The peak of Mount Meru ends up in heaven. So there are 7 layers of heaven here which reach out to heaven. But basically this was created by Yaldabaoth himself. So, how do the final actual universe look like? I'll show you in a moment. I'll show you just in a moment. This is how the original, the whole universe looks like. In the sense, this is as just now described. This is the Patala. This is our world. That is there's 7 Patalas, and the 8th world is our world, and there are 7 heavens. That means 13 realms, 13 layers of the material world created by Yaldabaoth, the Yaldabaoth himself, the 13th, and then from Sophia there are 14 ions. Above there are 14 here, including Yaldabaoth, 13 material world, Yaldabaoth, and 14, and the 13th is Yaldabaoth. There are 26 total, 13 in the material world and 13 in the upper world. Because there are 26 ions from A to Z. From A to Z, there are 26 letters. So from here, starting with A in the Patala, the lowest of the worlds, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L till M, it is the material world. And there is this water, heavenly water, border of heavenly water dividing the two realms of heaven and material world. In the heavens, there are again 13 ions. 13 ions in the sense 12 ions plus Christ. So that makes 13 ions. But the ions are not, as you can see here, everything is so very dense. It is pure material. Further you go down the patalas, they are thicker, denser, and of course the weirdest of creatures live here. Some six-headed snake here, some three-headed snake here. I'm not very familiar with Hindu mythology, but they say in the Patalas, the snakes, lower beings live here. Basically, the concept is in the lowest of the worlds, one-dimensional creatures live. In the second world, two-dimensional, third world, or three-dimensional, something like that. But I think from in Earth, the three-dimensional beings live, as I explained in my previous video. So what I mean to say is this world, this material world, is very much rock hard, rock material, and very dense material, and it is not the same here in the heaven. In the heaven, everything is in the form of energy emanation. So this is how basically looks the Yaldabaoth creation looks like, the lower part. Now let us go back to the description again. According to a Gnostic book, Apocrypha of John, which was found in Nag Hammadi in 1946, in the very beginning, there were only energy emanations called ions. Noesis, meaning thinking, was the highest form of God. I think we have gone through this already. Let us switch to the next slide. Now the critical phase of creation happens. Sophia, who is goddess of wisdom, fell victim to curiosity. In a moment of weakness, gave birth to Yaldabaoth without seeking her spouse's permission or that of the one. Yaldabaoth, of course, was born. He had a head of a lion and the body of a snake. He had no idea where he came from, and there was no one else apart from him in the world. The only voice he recognized was his mother's. So Sophia realized her folly and repented, but afraid of other Ions' censure, she hid her son in a cloud. Yaldabaoth had the spark of his mother and all her wonderful powers, so he created material world, as I have shown you just now. The Mount Meru, along with the seven underworlds, under earth worlds, were called Patalas, and seven upper earth worlds called the heavens. There are basically 14 lokas, including, of course, Sophia. So he made his minion archons, Thoth, Hermos, Kalika, Omri, Yabel, Adonain, Sabath, Cain, and Abel, lords of the planets. He made the planets. I made a video how he made the planets, what formula he used to create the planets. I will leave a link to that video too in the description. So Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon were respectively the controllers of these realms. He appointed 5 lowly archons: Basin, Yobel, or Mopiel, excuse my Yiddish is very bad, Melchai and Melcher, Aldonine and Belias, to Lord, Ether, Fire, Air, Earth, Water and Earth. So, yeah, I will also upload these slides to my photos so that you can refer to them when if you feel like. Anyway, meanwhile in heaven, one strange thing happened. Since Yaldabaoth kept draining energy from Sophia, Sophia grew weaker and weaker and kept falling into the dark world. So she apologized to the One and Barbelo and asked them to intervene to save her from falling into material world. The One listened to her sympathetically and came up with a plan to redeem her status in heaven and basically pull her back to heaven. He created a divine man called Gerardimus and a spouse for him called Zoe. That is, Gerardimus means the heavenly Adam, actually. Um, uh, the divine Adam, basically. And his spouse was called Zoe. One day he talked to so loud in heaven that Yaldabaoth could hear his voice like a roar, and the water boundary reverberated with that sound. And at the same time, Yaldabaoth watched image of Gerardimus, who was glowing with radiance and had wonderful body. So Yaldabaoth thought, I too will create a creature with matching abilities in my world so that uh, he uh, uh, he created a man called Adam. All 365 of his minions contributed a part to the body of man, but even though body had magnificent parts, it did not move. God sent emissaries to Yaldabaoth, who advised him to blow his breath into the body. So he did, and the body immediately rose. Yaldabaoth saw the intelligence of the man, and Yaldabaoth immediately felt jealous. He soon realized that the heavens tricked him into sharing his spark. Basically, what was the plan of the gods? The heaven, Sophia complained to One that Yaldabaoth is basically sucking away all her energy. So they wanted to save Sophia from falling into abyss. So they wanted to weaken the Yaldabaoth. So they came up with the plan of the divine man, and Yaldabaoth, being stupid, ignorant, he fell for that plan and he shared his spark with the man, Adam. So he realized that he has shared his own spark, and a man will be sucking away energy from him, the life from him. So he immediately realized that. But the damage has already been done. Man was drawing energy from him, thus causing him loss of his spark. So he created a garden called Eden and kept man there. He devised a construct called death and reproduction, placed tree of life in garden whose fruit caused death. He created a female from side of Adam. She was nothing like what he expected her to be, as Sophia hid Eve's divine spark, that is Zoe's divine spark, in Adam himself. He later tempted Eve to eat from tree of life. Eve ate the apple from tree of life, and he himself raped Eve twice. because he was frustrated. He did not, the divine spark he was looking for was not there in Eve. He got frustrated and he himself raped Eve twice, and the result was to spawn his two own children to keep control over the world in his hands. Thus, he fathered Cain and Abel, whose children are the present day royals. Sophia then put divine Zoe spark back in Eve, and Adam and Eve had a son called Seth, and Christ is the descendant of Seth. Still, Adam and his family lived for almost 1,000 years. The idea, the Yaldabaoth wanted to kill the Adam because he was taking away his energy, his life, basically spark. Yaldabaoth, in another form of Yaldabaoth, he takes the form of a dragon, and the dragon, as you know, fires, breathes fire and spits fire. So that itself is basically a life. So that life, this guy Adam was gulping down and growing stronger. So he wanted to kill Adam, and that is why he drew another plan. He came up with another plan. He created lowly place called Earth, very dense place called Earth, and he also hidden the tree of knowledge from man so that he will never realize his divine roots and try to go back from whence he came from. If he knows about the divine, the tree of knowledge, then man will definitely try to go back from where he came from, to Mother Sophia, and from Mother Sophia is nothing but goddess. She lives in heaven. So from that day onwards, humans have been ignorant and acting like batteries which recharge the planets, which function like capacitors. He has been recycling human souls and making them take new body after scratching their memory. So now, after some time, the it was Sophia was basically shifting from heaven to material world, and she was traveling uh, to and fro from material world to heaven and heaven to material world. It was getting very difficult for her to retain her energy and her divinity. So, as I told you, there are only 13 realms in the material world, and the 14th realm being Sophia herself. So, recently, ninth planet is the NASA, National Administration of Space National Association of Space Administration of US, has disclosed that there is a ninth planet that is not known to man so far. And if that is true, that ninth planet could as well be Sophia. That is, she is not entirely formless as the spirits of the heaven. She might have taken a form. I mean, basically, she may have what do you call, a watery form, fluid form, not a solid material, fully material form, three-dimensional form. But I doubt she might have a kind of a fluid form, and Sophia is here if that is true. And if that is real, then I think we have established a connection with heaven. We have, if not a solid connection is could never be thought of, because heaven can never be material. Heaven is always spiritual. It is just ions in the form of energy emanations reside in heaven, but not in solid form, in material form. So, anyway, we might have established a connection with heaven, and our mother, Sophia, is mother of all living beings, including animals. So, the animal kingdom, human kingdom, both for both, she is the mother, and so we might as well have our mother nearby. In conclusion, we should break free from worldly desires that arise due to the archons, the seven archons, those, I mean, the planets, and help Christ redeem his spouse, Sophia, whose spark is hidden in all of us, and thereby return to heaven. The concept of Apocrypha of John, the last of the incidents would be redemption, that is redemption of Sophia. Christ will come to the material world and take back his bride Sophia back to heaven. So that's a complete story. Let us meet again. For now, uh, keep smiling. Thank you.